Augments are about to completely change in Illuvium PvP with some major things coming up. But right before we talk about that, we are going to quickly discuss something that Ben posted in the Discord quite some time ago, go over some of the changes he's proposing and sorts of updates that are going to be coming. And then we'll circle back to Augments, and then I'll talk about what I think it means for the future meta of Illuvium, how it's going to change the game, and maybe some different teams and synergies that are either going to become better or maybe even worse after all of these changes are said and done. So let's jump into Ben's comments. So the overview changes of next patch, these have all happened already. They're going to be coming in a different video I'm making, so we're not going to worry about that too much for now. But here are some things that haven't happened yet. There will be Balance Pass focusing on buffing and more fun changes later. Things like Tempest and stuff do need a pretty serious buff, so there's going to be a lot of really great buffs and things coming later on, and they want to get that in as fast as possible, so probably in next patch. The next thing is legendary augments. Synergy legendary augments will always be relevant to the teams being used by the players. So for example, if you have a team that's mostly air alluvials, then there's a good chance an air synergy chip is actually going to appear in as one of the legendary augments in one of the rounds. And also if your opponent has a lot of different synergies as well. True Sight supposedly already fixed. The next thing is exploring the possibility of allowing units to have one legendary augment and two normal augments. I think this is going to be a really, really positive change, and it's not the big augments change I'm going to be discussing, but I think this is going to be really positive. The big thing here is that getting a legendary augment that would go in your hyper carry always felt a little bit awkward because you already have your augments set up properly for that, and the legendary augments are rarely significantly better than those would have been. Whereas for defensive augments, you can normally always add a few more defensive augments and slot them in somewhere on a Titan or whatever it might be. So this will better balance that out so that legendary augments are a little bit more relevant more often. Since a lot of the offensive legendary augments, you don't often need because you've already got it pre-set up for yourself. The other thing is they'll be doing testing listing sessions, which is really, really exciting. And they have some refinement planned for placement matches, which I know is upsetting a lot of people. You go into these matches when you first start up your career, and you can have some interesting outcomes where you're losing like 500 points a game. It's insane. All right. So after that's all been said and done, what is this augment change I'm talking about? It has been discussed quite publicly, especially on the Inferno 1 stream with It's Martini, Kyle from Illuvium, and Jimbarino, as well as Ben a little bit as well early on in that stream. And what they basically talked about is the one augment system, where even though you can equip 3 of a given augment into your team, you'll really only be able to put 1 of them on the board at any given time. So do you remember those biogenetic suppressors that suppress healing or energy on your opponent's team? You'll only be able to use 1 of them at any given time, making it a lot harder to suppress the energy of your opponents. However, it goes the other way too. The empath teams are particularly strong because you give them those augments that suppress the attack speed of your opponent when they get close, but they'll only be able to equip 1 of them. So you have a lot of augments where people just stack 3 of like 3 different kinds and put them on their team and call it a day. But now you'll only be able to put 1 on your team. So what do you do instead? Is you build out your team with lots of different kinds of alluvials, which is going to be the big change that will happening after this. To what extent will be hard to say, but there aren't 12 or 13 individual augments you want to add to your team necessarily. And so alluvials and different synergies and ways to adjust your strategy mid-game are really going to come to the forefront here. The other thing is that you cannot shut down entire teams anymore. We saw Air get a recent nerf, which stops them from shutting down Invoker and Scion teams a little bit too much. But with changes to augments, it'll prevent that even more, where you can't just shut down a team. Instead of building out 3 biogenetic suppressors to stop their energy gain entirely, you will instead either have to add some sort of air offsuit that you can add to your team pretty easily, or add a handful of rogues to take out those scions before they get too dangerous. Some of the teams it might make a bit too broken. I think invokers are being kept in check a lot by augments. They're already pretty strong and they're kind of hard to get off the ground because augments shut them down a little bit, or at least slow them down a little bit. So I think that invokers and scions will become really strong after this change. It also could make Arcanite even better. Things like slowing down attack speed, reducing resistances and stuff is a big part of these augments. And so Magma and Arcanite will become a little bit stronger. Nothing crazy, but they will definitely become a bit stronger after this. The other thing is it will interact really weird with empaths. It'll get rid of a lot of the augments that are slowing down empaths and helping beat empaths. But at the same time, it's going to get rid of a lot of the augments that stop things like fighters and rogues from just terminating empaths on arrival. So it's going to go a little bit both ways. Hard to tell where it's going to see empaths end up. I think it's going to make them net worse a little bit, but they're still going to sit around the middle of the pack. And I don't think that that's going to change for a long time.